Mahatma Gandhi and Veer Savarkar, we've been conditioned to believe that they have nothing in common. But I sit here with Makarand Paranjape, who is a preeminent scholar. He's been with JNU for 30 years, moved on, taught English, written several books, manuscripts, papers, articles, prolific writer who says that in fact history's forgotten doubles. Hindutva and Swaraj is represented by Veer Savarkar and Mohandas Gandhi are actually needed by both the nation and, of course, also, interestingly, he says, one another. How does this duopoly play out in the real world?
Yes, Rahul, I'm really happy to be on the show with you. And I want to say that, the entire conversation has been constructed as if they are polar opposites, Savarkar and Gandhi. Or in my book, I like to humanize them. So Mohan and Vinayak. And I think the real opposition is not between these two proponents of different paths to Swaraj, different approaches to Swaraj, how you win freedom, but between Swaraj and Jihad. So these are the real opposites when it comes to subcontinental history in the last 100 years. Whereas when it's about Savarkar and Gandhi, of course, they differed. And the defining moment or the departing moment came after Khilafat. But as far back as 1909, when they met in London at Shyamji Krishna Varma's house, India House it was called,
House, yes, right.
That too on Vijayadashmi. They met on a very auspicious occasion. And Savarkar obviously advocated an armed overthrow of the British Empire. And Gandhi said, no, we are not going to win freedom in that fashion. And on his way back to South Africa, on the SS Kildonan Castle, he wrote this book, Hind Swaraj. What very few people remember is that Savarkar's first Indian War of Independence was also published in 1909. So to me, that is the iconic or defining moment, 1909, when two of these proscribed books were written by two extraordinary people, showing two different paths to Swaraj. So that's where I try to...
So what made you place these two texts in direct conversation today?
Because I think that Hindu society needs to reconcile, if not reconcile, at least go beyond these differences, because the unity of Hindu society is at stake. So, and you can't do it when you have created these two polar opposites. And I think that if you can reconcile Savarkar and Gandhi, and even if you can't, because the overarching umbrella of Hindu unity or even of India, Bharatiyata, or of Swaraj, if you look at that umbrella, then it has space for both Savarkar and Gandhi. The spectrum of India, Indianness, the nation, Hindu, being Hindu, all of that is wide enough to accommodate these two. But if you, keep them as opposites in a very narrow way, then you're going to divide Hindu society, which is not desirable for Indian democracy.
Well, of course, it depends on the direction in which many people say Hindu society should move. So we've been told that there are two very distinct visions along which Hindu society should move, and Gandhi had one and Savarkar had the other. Is this true?
No, so that's what I'm trying to say. Savarkar's strategic vision, his understanding of political Islam, which would not only divide India, but as you know, 9/11 and whatever has happened after that pose a serious threat to the international world order. I think Savarkar was perceptive or perspicacious enough to recognize that threat long back. And I think other authors have picked that up. They've made him the father of Indian strategic thinking, not the father of the nation. And Gandhiji, I think, was so important for India because I believe that we learned to be a democracy only because of the mass awakening in which millions of people hit the streets against an unjust government, the imperial government, And today we've lasted out as a democracy only because of that legacy. Otherwise, I'm afraid, I mean, if you go contra-factual, we might have become a communist country, we might have become a military dictatorship, we might have, because even Bose was a bit of a dictator, Subhash Chandra Bose. You read all his writings. And in fact, the new book on Hedgewar also tells you how, I mean, and let's also not forget that Savarkar, today we exalt him, was never a popular leader. You know, he was never a mass leader. He never won any elections. So the popular uprising against the British had Gandhi as its main protagonist, and you can't deny him that role. So we need Gandhiji for civic nationalism, and for strategic thinking we need Savarkar, and there are some limits to both, and I'm not interested in papering over those limits. So I don't look at them as these figures to be pedestalized, but rather to see them at their limits. And one of the limits of Savarkar is, despite his eloquent book Hindutva, which is actually a work in progress because he keeps changing his mind as it flows, he doesn't have a solution. You know, he doesn't know what to do with this huge mass of Muslims in India, 250 million Muslims. Now, Hitler's final solution is obviously not available, and it's obviously morally, I mean, repugnant. It's repugnant.
Yes.
So that is not the Sanatani way. So what is the way of rapprochement? What is the way of living together?
Some people said that create an enclave for them, split India, and that's what Savarkar was aiming to do. Is that true?
Well,
create Pakistan?
Pakistan has been created. It hasn't solved our problem, right? So we have to learn to live together. So the secret of coexistence is not appeasement. I guess Gandhiji, we call it appeasement, but at that time, like Krishna, he said you can go as far as possible because after all, they're your brothers, right? And obviously that didn't work because the more you gave, the more they demanded. So it has to be an equitable balancing where maybe under a constitution like ours, which is a wonderful constitution, all citizens have equal rights.
So you're saying, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Then Mahatma Gandhi was clear, you turn the other cheek, you appease, you fall over backwards.
That won't work.
But Veer Savarkar, he had no solution.
No, I feel Gandhi wasn't what we portray him to be. He never said turn the other cheek. He only said, if you show that there's no enmity in your heart, if you open your heart out, sooner or later, the other will respond because we are all similar. We are all human beings, right? That was his point. But in terms of politics, it didn't work because the more he gave, the more the other side demanded. So that has been disproved. And one of the great, I would say, intellectuals of modern India, very, under-recognized, in fact, not recognized at all. I have 2 or 3 chapters on him. Sitaram Goyal, he shows why this doesn't work. But what was Savarkar's way? If you take it to its logical conclusion, it would be second-class citizenship. 2 kinds of citizenship. So you disenfranchise a number of people, but who does it? Who passes the citizenship test? Who decides whether they have reverence for your heroes? Birthright, everyone has, right? You're born in this country, but who will decide whether you appreciate its heroes? So that test doesn't work, I feel, easily.
Okay, so you're suggesting that Savarkar, if you go through the entire gamut of his writings, was irreconcilably alienated from the Muslim society.
I wouldn't say that. I
So,
mean, if I read him very carefully, he said, let there be a civil war. Because once you defeat... See, political Islam has to be defeated. Either you defeat them on a battlefield or you defeat them ideologically.
That's right.
So the defeat of political Islam is right now happening in a number of ways. It is imploding from within. Even, the heart of this religion, people don't want that kind of Islamism, which leads to fanaticism, extremism, you might call it terrorism, but that brand of political Islam is being, as it were, negated, even in the lands from where it was born. So in the subcontinent, we had a great opportunity to do that long ago.
That's right.
But we failed. And even today, I would say we haven't found a real solution, an equitable solution.
But even
to
in
this.
47, it came up. Should we go in for a civil war? in a sense, and that was sort of not viable. It wasn't considered viable.
But we did have a civil war.
We did eventually.
A civil war.
That's right.
And many people, I've
Well, civil war by another name.
By another name.
Yes.
But, the British wouldn't have allowed a bloodbath of that kind with armies fighting one another. So
Yes.
I think that these things need to be worked out. And perhaps this is a great opportunity today to welcome into the mainstream, all these contending actors.
So, look, is Hind Swaraj still relevant in a hyper-modern digital, sort of India, which is sort of moving on warp speed into the cyber world, or is it more a moral compass than even a political guide? What is it now?
Both. Because let's not forget that Hind Swaraj is a outstanding critique of modernity. So modernity in Hind Swaraj is seen as a suicidal civilization. Through overconsumption, you destroy the habitat, which we are seeing. And then you said moral compass. You lose your moral compass because from dharma, artha, kama and moksha, you remove moksha and dharma. You're only left with pleasure and profit, right? You're only left with kama and artha. And any civilization which pursues only pleasure and profit will be suicidal. So Gandhi saw that. And therefore, he's even more relevant today, in a sense, than he was then. So that's why I'm saying that politically, Gandhi's relevance is in creating democracy, a civil society where people of different opinions can coexist, where there are many political parties, where religion is a private matter. But culturally, we are Hindus. So Gandhiji always says that. He says, I'm a better Sanatani, he said it in his last days, than the people who are opposing me and who are baying for my blood.
So this is very interesting because obviously there are people in this country who said we are Gandhians and we are not Savarkarites or we are not the RSS followers, camp followers, etc. because there is this dichotomy. But I want to ask you, because Hindutva is equated with majoritarianism and there is an element of it, do you think Savarkar's vision has been misunderstood or is it actually how should one put it, distorted maybe?
Yes, in a sense, Savarkar has been distorted into some sort of Indian version of Nazism, which he wasn't. He was a very practical man, and he began in his that big book, Indian War of Independence, with a Hindu-Muslim unified front against the British imperialists. But he changed after Khilafat. You see, so there's a dynamic process in Savarkar's mental evolution as well. But why have we
But despite that, isn't it true that even the first constitution of the Free State of India emphasized inclusivity?
In fact, Hindu Mahasabha wrote a constitution.
That's right.
It's not too different from the one that Ambedkar
wrote,
presided over. So it's so similar. It grants citizenship rights, due process, many things which we got from the British. But, if you look at the RSS, they accept both Savarkar and Mahatma Gandhi. In fact, Gandhiji is remembered in their daily prayer. So who is it that makes this an impossible pair or an irreconcilable, incommensurate opposite? It's usually, I would call them the Congress party because...
Or that ecosystem.
Because,
now, who are these people?
Well, in a way, they inherited the mantle from the British Empire and they are afraid of the Hindu genie, which is now out of the bottle. You can't put it back in the bottle. So they are afraid of political Hinduism, just as it was Savarkar was afraid of political Islam. But Hindutva, as a political brand of Hinduism, cannot be wished away. And this is a majority...
But does it have that leading, serrated edge that militant Islam has or political Islam has?
It shouldn't. But
does it?
It rarely does. Sometimes it can. If you mobilize it into hating the other, it can. See, that is why I feel integrity is much more important than ideology, ultimately. And I don't think Hindutva necessitates turning the Muslim, whether the Indian Muslim or the Muslim outside of India, as an enemy. No. We have to learn to coexist. But Hindutva is about asserting the rights of the majority and not turning the majority into a minority with their educational institutions, their temples, their destroyed heritage, never to be reclaimed. I don't think that is what India stands for. And all democracies are majoritarian. It only depends on how you cobble together the majority. And the majority doesn't have to be in religious terms. It is a cultural majority. So Indian Muslims are also Indian Muslims. They're not Arab Muslims or Indonesian Muslims, right? Or European Muslims. And therefore, I don't think that there is this antagonism as certain other political parties have tried to create between these two ways of looking at India.
And who are these political parties?
Well, I mean, you know that the Congress has been in power in India for 65 of our 70 years, or little less than 65. And for them, political Hinduism was the biggest threat. And therefore, this bogey of Hindu terror, this constant ratcheting up of the fear of
that we're becoming a Hindu Pakistan.
Also that they'll kill you, they are very intolerant, Hindus are dangerous, an armed Hindu is a threat to society, which is not true. You know, so if you think that an armed Sikh or an armed Muslim is not a threat, but an armed Hindu is a threat. So this sort of what I would call fudging of issues, differential treatment of fanaticism, that only Hindu fanatics are dangerous, other fanatics are not dangerous. So they are by nature fanatical, which is doing an injustice to them. So I think my book is also about learning how to think. It's about hermeneutics. It's about understanding society. It's not a political book in the normal sense of the word. I don't take sides. Even in this debate between Savarkar and Gandhi, I don't take sides. In fact, I must tell you, though I don't want to be a spoiler, the last chapter is called Where All Enmity Ceases. And it's like the Svargarohan Parva of the Mahabharata. So if the Pandavas and the Kauravas in heaven could cease to be enemies, why can't Savarkarites and Gandhians cease to be enemies here and now?
Okay, so this is interesting because we've heard Mohan Bhagwat just recently, and he's painted a very inclusive picture of the way the RSS conceives Indian society. The Modi government often invokes both Gandhi and Savarkar, sometimes in the same breath. Do you think this is genuine synthesis, or I think the word is political appropriation?
See, obviously, you want to appropriate all the symbols, whether it's Netaji, who was very critical at that time,
That's right.
of even the Hindu Mahasabha, RSS. He was more leftist. In fact, the Forward Bloc is a left political formation. And, you want to appropriate, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. You have the tallest statue because he's a symbol of unity. So appropriation is the name of the game when it comes to politics. So I would say that polarization is required for Hindu vote bank politics. So to that extent, they will use Savarkar. But Gandhiji is our greatest soft power, I would say, resource in the world. So when all the world leaders come, they are taken to Rajghat. They are not taken anywhere else. And you have people, of very different ideological dispensations going there and offering floral tributes only to Gandhiji. So he's a unifying figure. But unfortunately in social media, I want to just say this, that the hatred for Gandhi is to me inexplicable, even appalling, because here's a man who lived his life in the open. What do we know about the private lives of all these other great people, even of the people who tweet against Gandhi? They're completely sheltered, what they do in their private, whether they are surfing certain channels, whether they watch porn or not. All of this out of the purview. But here's a person who has conducted certain experiments which we may not approve of, and then you brand him as this and that, instead of looking at his entire life and his whole contribution, to what he did for India, even for the world. Because I think Gandhi doesn't only stand for, Bharatiyata. He stands for all of human beings moving to another level of evolution, where we renounce the need to dominate somebody. So Swaraj is about self-restraint when you're powerful, and it's about resistance when you're weak. That is why Swaraj is so important for us.
And Hindutva?
Well, Hindutva is about asserting the rights of Hindus in India and not throwing them under the bus or shoving them under the carpet. To recognize that this is a country where Hindus are a majority and where the entire civilizational backbone has been created by this society. And in fact, Indian democracy is also underwritten because of the openness of Sanatana Dharma. And I think Mohan Bhagwat ji said, call them Sanatanis, call them Hindus, call them Hindavis, call them Indians, call them Bharatiyas. For us, they are all the same. Because if they have love for the motherland, and if they have reverence for its culture, if they have a great sense of pride in being Indians, for us they are Hindus. So for me, that's good enough. If Hindutva is that, it's good enough. But if it is in opposition, I don't want to define myself in opposition to somebody.
So one way that Hindus are obviously trying to assert themselves, many people allege, is by reclaiming history. And they've reduced this exercise, many claim, to a contest or a zero-sum game. So are these Hindutvavadis, or whatever you want to call them, reinterpreting the past to suit contemporary needs? Is that what's happening? Or is there actually a sense of lost civilizational self?
See, we definitely need to reclaim our history and this lost civilizational self. But if it goes to the extent of saying that you banish the Mughals, 1,000 years of history can't be banished as a footnote, or even the British period. Today, we think as if it was inconsequential. No, it isn't. It was very, very influential, and it changed what India was. We entered modernity.
But is that what's happening? Because I think the focus has been on some idolaters and iconoclasts, so like Aurangzeb, etc. I mean, are we purging the entire? Are we looking at it with more criticality, or are we purging? Especially when it comes to our textbooks.
I think we can be as critical as we like, but we shouldn't purge those periods of our history. In fact, we should study them more deeply to understand, if you want to understand it from the Hindu point of view, not from the conqueror's point of view, but from the point of view of those who were conquered, then we better understand why we lost, why we were defeated as a civilization. And the entire glorious past of India lies in a rubble all around you. That's in this very city of Delhi. Don't you want to know what happened? Why did this happen?
So that brings me to this next question. Is Indian identity, if it's tied in with a sort of civilizational Hindu self, is it in your view cultural or merely political?
No, it's both. See, the first thing we should recognize is Hindu is not a bad word, okay? It's all right to call yourself Hindu. Others have called us that.
Yeah.
We can certainly call ourselves that. We can also call ourselves Sanatanis. We can call ourselves by, Krishna Bhakts, whatever these different denominations are. We can also call ourselves Christians, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains. I call some of them co-Sanatanis. The only point is, when any of these others become anti-Sanatani, anti-Hindu, then Hindus have to rise. So political Islam was clearly anti-Sanatani, just as the conquering invaders used Islamic theology to justify whatever they did, the conquest, the loot, the destruction, the vandalism. So we have to oppose those.
Where do you see... Now look, I mean, this is something
and the Christians did it, the Marxists did it. You see, so many of them use different disguises. Modernity is also in some ways anti-Sanatani. Sometimes it's simply non-Sanatani. So whenever Sanatana Dharma, whatever is against Dharma, like, when the Dalai Lama met Mao, he admired communism. But there's a moment of reckoning where he said, this man is against Dharma, so I can't be a partner to him. So we can't partner those ideologies, those political forces, and those economic, regimes which are anti-dharmic. It's as simple as that.
You're talking about communism.
Whatever they are. Okay. We are a dharmocracy, as I think...
So this is a fascinating one, because many people say that this is a sense of false Hindu victimhood, that in a constitutional democracy like ours, there is no question of Hindus being persecuted into extinction, etc. Do you really think so, or do you believe that there is a genuine threat? And political Hindutva is a reaction to the preservation of a way of life which is being militated against.
Yes, there is a threat, I would say, but I'm very confident that Sanatana Dharma cannot vanish, because even if it vanishes from India, which I hope never happens, people in other parts of the world will see it because it's a way of finding truth. And you cannot banish this quest for truth. But in India, if you have an educational institution, if you have a temple, you're at a disadvantage if you're a Hindu. You know, I went to St. Stephen's College, and no Hindu can ever be the principal of St. Stephen's College. And it's not fair because they're taking the money of the Indian government to pay all the teachers. Then you raise your own funds. If you want to run a minority institution, don't take funds from the government of India. If you take funds from the government of India, make everybody equal. Give admission to everyone based on whatever criteria. And we have to actually extend this debate at some point even to the reservations, because you can't do this unto perpetuity. You will only be inverting the caste system, isn't it?
Yes.
So just by being born as such and such forever and ever, even if I'm president of India, I would still claim those benefits. Makes no sense. So I'm saying Indian democracy has so many distortions. These need to be corrected, and it's an ongoing process. And it's not just about religion, but the threat against this way of life was real. What happened to the pagans? They've all been destroyed. We are the last of them.
We're the last of them.
We are the last of them.
So I want to ask you, who's more relevant in, we've talked about history's forgotten doubles. What about future?
Yes.
Who's more relevant? Whose way will guarantee that this great Hindu civilizational culture is not wiped out?
We need both. As I said, Savarkar showed us political Hinduism, which is important, not only to secure the interests of Hindus, but possibly to secure democracy as well. And Gandhiji showed us civic nationalism, cultural nationalism, even spiritual nationalism. And definitely we need both.
We need both. Well, this is why you need to buy this book, because you'll get an understanding of where the twains meet and why we need both. This is it. This is Makarand Paranjape's epic tome. It's been published by Penguin, and it's going to be available very soon. So get your hands on this copy. It's going to be fascinating.